we're going to be looking at satellite surveillance technologies all the way down to cell phone technologies and bridge them together with software so that software can run concurrently or congruently between all platforms, whether they be space-based, commercially based, or something off of your cell phone. It's really all the same software, and it's access to sensors and sensor platforms, and then what you do with that information. So it's a huge topic. It requires lots of explanation to do it properly. Otherwise, you just kind of get a general idea, and you don't really have a full conceptual understanding. I'm not trying to explain the algorithms, but I am trying to the best of my ability, provide a full conceptual understanding, because that's what we need. And if we get there, then we have more or a greater ability to start holding people accountable.
That's awesome. So, and is it going to be a several shows?
Yeah, it's ongoing. It started with chatbots, and then, the chatbot piece is great, but we're still trying to, or at least I'm still, if you're all with me, then still trying to figure out the best way to illustrate data collection, to illustrate collection of information, trying to define what that information is, why it's valuable, how it's monetized and put into the economic system, while simultaneously illustrating the desire for the same types of information from governments and from intelligence agencies, which makes it two heads of the same proverbial beast or snake. And ultimately at that point, when we get that far, transition into stimulation, where they're able to take that information, all the information about you, physiologic, emotional, physical, cognitive, all those things, build a profile, and then be able to start strategically inserting stimuli. And it ranges from changing your feed to selective pop-up advertising, all the way up to and including directed energy systems that can potentially interact with your nervous system and your brain and your organs. And nanotech will be plugged in there at some point again. So yeah, that's the long game for all of that. But we're still in surveillance. We're going to go top down. We're going to look at satellites all the way down to a cell phone today. We're on episode 119. And we're going to look at more IARPA and DARPA stuff. If you want show notes, go to patriotsoapbox.com, go to the shows tab, look for the Big Tech Archive, or Big Tech Shows tab, and you'll see the archive notes in there. Those of you that want them probably already know where the link is. So we're just going to get rolling here. This is where we're going to go. And we briefly looked at this last show. And this is a program from DARPA, the Warfighter Analytics Using a Smartphone for Health. And I found some stuff today that showed that this program is they're actually funding peripheral devices too. A smartwatch is more or less a miniaturized smartphone. So it's anything wearable, anything near the body that can be used to understand what's going on with a person. And it's basically remote medical monitoring, whatever way they can do it. And what it says here is the objective of WASH, Warfighter Analytics Using Smartphones, is to extract physiologic signals, which may be weak and noisy, that are embedded in the data obtained through existing mobile device sensors, accelerometer, screen, microphone, antennas, everything. Such extraction and analysis is done on a continuous basis, meaning the extraction and the analysis of this information is done in real time and may help determine current health status and identify latent or developing health disorders. So another piece here, 92% of adults in the United States own a cell phone. You can see how this cross applies, right? It's built for the warfighter, but they say in the announcement here that 92% of all adults in the United States have a cell phone. So they developed this stuff for soldiers, and it immediately cross applies via software through the platforms, particularly Google and Apple. Google and Apple have upwards of 90+% of the market share of smartphones in the United States. So that's how it would be deployed. at the platform level, the device level, access to all the sensors. What does that look like? Behavioral and personal characteristics, eye movement, voice, device orientation, GPS location, fingers, how you touch the phone, how you type on the phone, gesture, finger pressure, grasping, pattern, hand movement, your gait, how do you walk? You walk with a strut, you kind of shuffle your feet, you have a limp, the speed, body, motion, your heart rhythm, what type of applications you use on your phone, what the pattern of the use is, how often you check Twitter, how often you check Gmail, whatever, right? Facial recognition, full and partial. I'm going to do a whole show on light projectors, screen and lasers. And the stuff is amazing. I found stuff today with light projection that makes me think that they're able to do coarse grain quantum sensing with the light projectors that they have for something like a Face ID, where they can use the diodes that are in there and put a magnetic field out in the environment, and they can look at the spin states of the diodes and be able to understand the magnetic fields, which replaces things like a magnometer, which is down here in the sensors that they're looking at here in this WASH program. Smartphone sensors, this is just some of them. A camera, pedometer, a light sensor, thermometer, fingerprint sensor, proximity sensor, which are antennas. Proximity sensors emit magnetic fields, emit electric fields. Proximity sensors also emit ultrasonic fields from your speakers, and they also emit light, lasers. Most devices today have phased array laser systems on them in the forward and rear facing cameras and others. A magnetometer, accelerometer, gyroscope, and a microphone. And this is basically cartoon level, right? What they're looking at, trying to understand in real time when you're actually using the device, when you're in motion doing things, when you're potentially at rest or waiting, when you're working in a workspace, driving, whatever else that you're doing, understanding and soaking information, extracting information in real time all the time as the device is nearby. This is what they're looking for at a high level when they're announcing this program. This does not mean it's exclusive. Physiological and cognitive markers or symptoms. These are just examples. Being able to understand the stuff, keep in mind, with a cell phone. Excessive sweating, shaking voice, shaking hands, muscle tension, facial tics, racing heartbeat, blood pressure, changes in it, facial freezing, change in how you walk, decreased attention and concentration. Interesting. Decreased attention and concentration. Communication variance, diminished reasoning ability, poor decision making, and impulsive actions. Extracting all of this stuff from a cell phone when you're using it and when you're not using it, when it's nearby. And I'll read this real quick and we will move on with cameras, if you will. Satellite down to cell phone. The program goal is to enable the creation of mobile applications that passively assess a warfighter's readiness immediately and over time. Okay, so they're looking at for medical grade clinicians, health conditions supported by the analysis, fusion of digital biomarkers for disease correlation. Commanders get this information, so okay. You have the medical establishment, you have the government or corporate establishment, commanders with unit readiness information, both current and in the near future, users of the device themselves. So we already see this with the health apps that come standard with something like an Apple phone or a Google phone, tracking your sleep schedule, your stress levels, your heartbeat, your exercise, and on and on and on. So this is where we're gonna revisit this a lot. I'm gonna keep bringing this up because this is huge. Being able to assess a human without any contact with something like a smartphone. This is a very big deal. A very big deal, especially going forward with the tracing, COVID tracing and social credit scores. And you can't go anywhere in China without a cell phone. You have to have a cell phone with you. Well, this is why. because they know more about you than you know about yourself with a smartphone. They understand medically, they understand scientifically, mathematically, medically what's going on with you. So that's at the ground level, right? In your pocket level. We're gonna look at some more stuff here. Psychological signals. This is an older program from 2015. And this is detection and computational analysis of psychological signals with things like cell phones, tablets, and on and on. Analyze verbal, nonverbal cues, right? Novel source of data, something for like an iPhone or an Android or a Connect, social networks, which means it's collecting this information through apps and or gaming sites, right? Apps like Twitter and Facebook, synthetic environments, electroencephalograms, webcams, etc. Anything and everything that can pull information. That's what this program is looking for. Again, another DARPA program. MIT, Dartmouth, Boston University, Vanderbilt, University of Southern California, UCLA. Early recognition indicators of psychological distress, depression, anxiety, PTSD. More effective triage of potentially distressed service members. Facilitate clinician training. Sharing insights and data with the scientific community, because we're all just guinea pigs. Virtual humans may reduce stress and fear of judgment. Virtual humans, so a virtual psychotherapist, a virtual counselor, a virtual medical doctor. What this is AI replacing human functions. Human functions that wear a white coat. White collar job displacement. Robots, blue collar job displacement. AI, generally speaking, white collar job displacement. It's happening already in the financial industries. It's happening in the call centers. Those are just two examples. Virtual humans. This ties back in with chatbots, being able to understand human sentiment and then to project human sentiment and human emotion to a human in order to create a better experience than what that human could have with another human. That's the goal. Behavioral assessments in this program, DCAPS, DARPA, behavioral assessments, monitoring of military personnel before, during, and after a deployment. Because you don't have any rights when you're in the military. You don't really in America anymore either, but they still mouthpiece like you do. So, you know. Anyway, data analyze spoken and written communications, including metadata. Online behaviors, email, surfing habits, games, and social networking. All of this stuff can be soaked up by apps on your phone, folks. Any app. I need permission to your camera. I need permission to your contacts. I need permission to this and that. Oh, it's okay. We'll just tie all this stuff in. You can easily copy and paste and post something to Twitter, or copy and paste and, you know, pull a YouTube video. All those things are linked, and they build those links in because those are the proverbial stepping stones. Those are the back doors for apps to have access to everything on your phone. Most particularly of interest would be the sensors, the antennas, the cameras, the microphones, the accelerometers, the gyroscopes, the magnetometers, the LED V-cell lasers that now exist for Face ID and for augmented reality and very high definition photography. Lasers that do 3D mapping, 3D rendering, and we will get there as time goes on. That's what this program is, and it's here we are. We're 5-6 years down the road now, and this stuff is here. It's here, and it's in software, and this is where we're going. And if you don't believe me, just think about the scope of where we're at now, with lockdowns, with separation, with social distancing, with this fear of being around other humans. This model, this platform with AI using sensor platforms like a cell phone or a laptop to interact is the replacement. It's part of the fourth industrial revolution. It's part of the Great Reset. The Great Reset and the fourth industrial, these things are designed to recondition the way humans interact with their world so that the digital is inserted into everything. This is the transformation we're undergoing right now. So what do we look like in 5 years as a society if we continue down this path? If we don't understand what we're doing and where we're walking, where we're going, we don't understand it at all, we're going to be in a much different place than if we do understand it and are able to exercise and exert some influence in how it all goes. So now we're going to go to satellite. Biometric recognition at altitude and range. BRIAR. This program is, it says here it's closed, but it's not. It's ongoing. This stuff was, see right here, proposal date March 3rd, 2021. So they have a few rounds of this, and this literally just closed, what, yesterday? Proposal due dates were yesterday for this program. And this fuses in with some other programs we're going to look at tonight. And then we're going to dig into camera technology if time permits. If it doesn't, then we'll wait until the next go round. The BRIAR program aims to develop software algorithm, right? Software algorithms, systems capable of performing whole body biometric identification at long range from elevated platforms. Many intelligence community and Department of Defense agencies require the ability to identify or recognize individuals under challenging scenarios, such as at long range, for example, greater than 300 meters, through atmospheric turbulence, right? Clouds, dust, debris, rain, trees, whatever, or from elevated and or aerial sensor platforms. Example, it says here greater than or equal to 20 degrees sensor view angle from watchtowers or unmanned aerial vehicles. And what that means is it's not a straight linear shot. If it's up in the air and they have to project an image down or capture an image from the ground and they're up in the air, that's the greater than or equal to 20 degrees. It's not point line of sight where they're looking at you level. They're actually having to deal with multiple degrees of variation. Expanding the range of conditions in which accurate and reliable biometric-based identification could be performed would greatly improve the number of addressable missions, types of platforms, and sensors from which biometrics can be reliably used, and quality of outcomes and decisions. Now, the reason I spent the time I did discussing this stuff with the smartphone is because when we look further on, things like a camera and a microphone, as well as some of these other things, because you could argue the radar sensors combined with the camera, so proximity sensors or the antennas combined with the camera also provide a nice signature. That signature would be in a database. It's a very good signature of you, a very good profile of you, because it's right next to you all the time, your phone. It gets a good, clear picture. It gets a good, clear audio. It gets good, clear radar signatures so that they can reference databases with the software to provide a higher level of probability when they're looking at you from the sky, or when they're looking at you from a cell tower, or when they're looking at you from an elevated tower off of a skyscraper or a drone. They would have a beautiful point of reference from your dossier, from your profile, to be able to match and scale and say with a certain degree of probability, this is the person that we're looking for, because they've already got your biometrics, they've already got your picture, they've already got your radar signature from the device that you carry, because it says that 90+% of all adult Americans carry a phone. It's probably around the same for most of the industrialized world. So the reach of big tech is huge. When you look at the market share of Apple and Google having exclusive, damn near exclusive control or exclusive market share over mobile handsets. The amount of information that passes through their networks is amazing, and it's very valuable. The government wants it, and so does big tech. So in the show notes, this is here, and this is a 2-hour recording where they read through this document. It's an 87-page document, plus they have all their other stuff. But I want to show you some of the things that they're looking for here. And particularly, they're focusing on imaging. This program is beyond imaging because they're looking at biometrics as a whole. But again, this is what's publicly available. once you get into these programs, discussions don't stop with whatever we're told, obviously. So intelligence community needs the ability to identify people at range and at altitude for a range of missions: counterterrorism, protection of critical infrastructure, military force protection, blah, 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 right? Standard military stuff, right? So it looks benign, looks good. It's for national security. Until they turn these things inward, using things like the Patriot Act as a legal justification to take all of this kind of technology and point it at the domestic population, and then do it creatively with loopholes through things like advertising and marketing, and deploy it over social media networks and deploy it over hardware platforms like an iPhone or an Android phone. And you get the infrastructure and the architecture and the legal protections and the ability to monetize it all at the same time. Everybody wins. Corporate wins, government wins, fascism rules the day, and the population gets oppressed. The population gets their rights subverted. So, challenge number 1. Here's the probe video from 650 meters away with medium turbulence. Remember that atmospheric distortion that we were reading about? Gallery enrollment image. Well, this looks like something that your phone could take of you while you're staring at your Twitter feed, right? And this is something that a drone might take of you 650 meters away. It's a far, far away. That's almost 2,000 feet away with a telephoto blurry lens, right? What about a heat mirage? A heat mirage would be turbulence in the atmosphere as well, distorting the view if you're looking at somebody on a hot day. And so the idea here is to be able to take a shitty image that you see here on the right and be able to cross-reference it, or to be able to refine it and render it as a more clear defining image with software and algorithms, and get a greater probability of getting an image that looks like what you see here on your left. But be able to do it quickly and in real time from a drone. Atmospheric turbulence. An imaging phenomenon that introduces blur, distortion, and intensity fluctuations. This is possible with anything: rain, fog, sleet, heat, clouds, trees, whatever. Reflected light passes through moving air molecules, so dirt, debris, anything. Medium turbulence at 1 kilometer away. The real scene. This is what they're trying to, they just inverted here, right? So what's on the left is what they get, and this is what they want to be able to render. This is what they want to, this is the level of detail they want from a kilometer away. So, more examples: low atmospheric disturbance or turbulence, medium, and high. Single frames from a video collected by an Army long-range Face ID data set. Crazy. So challenge number 2 with this program, this is at altitude, folks. Stuff that you're not gonna be able to reach out and touch. You won't be able to influence any of this stuff. Brief view of a subject, a severe look angle, motion, resolution, challenges. Here's the gallery enrollment image. Again, everyone has a cell phone. Everyone has a picture like this somewhere. Whether you did it or whether someone else is looking at their phone and you're sitting at a restaurant or you're on a subway and their rear-facing camera is pointed at you, there's nothing you can do. You can't tell them to, hey, don't point your phone at me. It's their phone. That phone can be turned on, even though it's not your phone, and collect an image of you. Validate some other biometrics, and boom, they know it's you. Cross-reference it with your driver's license or your photo ID, whatever. Wouldn't be hard. That's all I'm saying. So the idea here is, this scenario, this guy could be just walking by a public camera somewhere up on a light pole or whatever, and you get a brief, like 2-second clip of the guy, and he's not really facing you, and the angle's off because the camera's from an elevated position. They want to be able to understand who that person is. and be able to do it quickly and use AI and algorithms to clean up the image, take what you can from the image, the side profile here, map it, and be able to say with some certainty that it's this dude over here on the left at distance greater than, what was it, 100 meters, I think it was. Same thing here. There's that. I think this is the guy they were talking about. So develop software algorithm-based systems capable of performing whole body biometric identification at long range from elevated platforms. And you see here the basic diagram. Oh, look, a watch list. Well, if you're a Trump supporter, guess what? Guess what? You're probably on a watch list now, you domestic terrorist. It's so pathetic. It's pathetic. So anyway, whole body biometrics, the shape, the movement, measurements, or other aspects of the human form, including your face. So we understand what facial recognition is. We understand what Face ID is. We understand that cameras can find you with your face. It's beyond that. They can find you looking at unique characteristics that make you you, how you move, how you sit, what your shape is. All of these things combined that when looked at are able to develop or create a high level of probability that it's you. Determine biometric signals that are universal, unique, and permanent human characteristics, things that you cannot escape from, that if you're not properly trained, you won't even know that you're exhibiting habitual biometric signals. If you didn't want to be found, you would change the way you walk. You would change the orientation of how you hold your head or your shoulders. You slouch, or do you stand up proud? Do you walk with a limp or not? If so, how bad? How long is your stride? Do you shorten your stride? Do you have a tick, a twitch? Do you want to fake one while you're moving through an environment so that you can subvert the biometric signal database tracking technologies that exist? You want to put a patch over your eye? Do you wear glasses? Should you? Should you wear glasses if you're trying to hide? It's very, very complicated is the point I'm trying to get at. It's not just, let me put on a hoodie and go. It's way more sophisticated than that. And when you start bringing in things like radar and LiDAR, light-based radar, you would have to change things like your heart rate, your respiration. You wouldn't even be able to really do it because they'd be able to map all of your organs. They would know you can't fake changing the size of your heart or overnight changing your muscle density. Right? You wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to change the distance between your shoulders or the distance between your elbow and your wrist or your knee and your ankle. Those are the types of things that are permanent, unwavering, unchanging, unique, permanent human characteristics. And those things are universal because everybody has those things. Well, most, unless you're an amputee or, you had a kidney removed or something. You get the idea. Ranging a distance, and they show you cameras. Just understand when you see a camera is simply a sensor that is designed to pick up electromagnetic waves that are in the visible light spectrum. What we understand as a camera. You also have infrared cameras, right? Those are designed to pick up electromagnetic waves in the infrared spectrum. An antenna that we understand that would be used to send and receive wireless communications is also a camera. It's also a camera. But it picks up frequencies in the microwave and the millimeter range or the radio wave range. EHF, SHF, UHF, VHF, ELF. They're all electromagnetic waves, just like light, just like infrared. And if you have the right pickup device, a camera versus an infrared camera versus an antenna, with software behind it, you can create images. So when you have antennas that work with cameras, you can use the cameras to train the software behind the antennas so that you can identify very accurately with antennas what you cannot or no longer identify with the camera, because perhaps there's not one around, or there's a wall in the way, or a mask in the way. But if over a period of time you're able to train the software, machine learning and algorithms, and refine and improve the database using cameras, then the antennas become your cameras, and antennas see through walls, antennas see through clothes. Antennas can map an image just as good as a camera. That's what I see when I look at this stuff. And we'll get there again with the antennas. Long-range facial recognition, dramatic improvement in unconstrained facial recognition. Super resolution, degraded, super resolution, the original. So what this is doing is it's taking a real shitty image, it's cross-referencing it with a really good image of a pool of candidates, a suspect, if you will, and then it comes up with a rendered image using machine learning and AI. Learn a common embedding space for high and low resolution images. There's a training phase here, right? So you need data sets. Well, all you need is a camera and a microphone and a cell phone basically around, and you get your data set. You have a training phase and a recognition phase. And they're putting AI chips in all the phones now. Go ahead and look up your latest and greatest iPhone. They advertise they have AI chipsets. And they do that for rapid, scalable computation on the device so that the network efficiency, sending computed information over the network, is more efficient. You don't have to send the raw data. You can send code to the phone, have the phone do the processing with the AI chip, and then send the results. So partial processing or total processing can be done locally on the device. And those chips, the processors, are reconfigurable. You can look up field programmable gate arrays to get an idea of how that works. And what it really means is that you can use software to program a computer chip to go through a certain type of logic, and then you can wipe that and reprogram the chip using software for another function. So these AI chips that are touting, great battery efficiency and super high fast processing and better rendering and imaging and excellent for augmented reality and all these games, right? That's the consumer stuff. They can also do things like this. Program and train AI for the phone's local environment that then gets put into the proverbial cloud that's accessible by any other phone that happens to enter or exit that environment. So there's this idea of information, your information, versus what's public information. That line, there is no line at this point when we look at technology. If it can be collected, it is being collected. And if it is being collected, it's being stored. And if it's being stored, it's being accessed. And if it's being accessed, chances are it's being monetized or used in some way that you don't have a say over. And how much of that information belongs to you? How much of that is violating things like your Fourth Amendment privacy? Should that be allowed on United States soil? And if so, for what purposes? And if we get that far, should there be a series of steps needed in order to be able to utilize or even collect or access that information? Does this hold true for government? Does this hold true for corporations? What I mean by corporations, I say that term generally because for marketing purposes, targeted advertising and everything else, they're able to use this kind of stuff. If it can be collected, it will be collected. And they're making money off of it. Should they? Did you give them permission? Or were you um, somewhat coerced into giving them permission just because you want to use something like a cell phone? Just because you want to exist in society where there happens to be a camera on every corner? Where are our civil rights? What do civil rights look like in the digital space? And the digital space has evolved and flourished so fast that it's a space without law, or without complete law. And a lot of it has to do because the lawmakers don't have a fucking clue what is possible. And that's a very big problem. It's a very, very big problem. So, gait recognition. It's right how you walk. We don't ever think about this, right? Oh, yeah, whatever. I walk. So what? Yeah, well, they know you. They can identify you based on your walk, how you walk. Motion based, many covariates can complicate things: shoes, clothing, ground, illumination, pose, subject health state, right? If you're sick or you're tired, you're going to walk differently than if you woke up and you just got like a promotion, or and you're on top of the world. Your emotional state affects everything. Your physiologic state affects everything. And that's what they're implying here. What you can see here is actuation points. They're able to, they're making a stick figure out of you, but what they're doing is they're trying to understand flex points, pivot points: hips, knees, ankles, arms, wrists, elbows, neck, shoulders. And then they can map it all out. All these things have specific distances. They're all known and defined and quantified. And what you see here is the ability to create very, very complex mathematical models of something like how you walk. Imagine what they're doing in your bedroom, folks. So, deep neural networks, use of temporal, which is time-based information, they're saying is underexplored, which means real-time analysis is needed. Real-time, all the time. Research needed in clothing invariants, complicated backgrounds, multi-view scenarios, long range, low resolution. These are the research areas that they want improved upon. Going back to the antennas piece, this is where antennas would come into play, because antennas see through clothing very well. Antennas would be able to model where bones start and stop and where muscles start and stop very well, because they have different reflective and different absorption properties. So you have a camera and you have an antenna simultaneously scanning and imaging an environment. And over a period of time, those two things combined create very high probabilities of identification. Significant advances for smart city and public safety. Solutions utilizing color and shape of clothing as a foundational component. This program here, one of these pieces of it, person re-identification. It's interesting. So you can ID somebody and then be able to re-ID them, I guess is what that's saying. Atmospheric turbulence. Let's see these pictures here. Different distortions. You see the different distortions. And being able to, with certainty, be able to identify, even with a shitty, crappy image like that, being able to identify somebody accurately. Keep in mind that these pictures might be taken a mile or more away from a drone, a satellite, or an elevated position like on the top of a building, multi-story building. That obviously wouldn't be miles away, but you get the idea. So let's see what else is in here. That's key point estimation of human poses, static and time-based, temporal. You see down here, right? Dancers, being able to look and track and understand movements, mapping, ankle, knee, hip, right? Waist, neck, shoulder, head. Gender classification using ratios of measurements. Check this out. Human body shape under clothing from a red, green, and blue image. That's just a standard color-based camera, not infrared, just a regular visible light camera, red, green, and blue. Key points for 3D shape pose optimization, clothing segmentation with cloth, skin, displacement models. Did you know that Tim Apple can see you just like this? And this is just what they're sharing with you folks. You put radar on top of this and you can overlay skin. You'll be able to see nipples and lines and curves and everything. Everything. I can show you in the Google patents where they talk about sub-millimeter resolution. Sub-millimeter, that's below or less than 1 millimeter resolution, 1 millimeter definition of detail. So you tell me if they can put a nipple on that, or your fingernails, or your eyelids. This is what's possible today, folks. Privacy is dead. Biometrics. See? Same type of thing. If you have clothes on or whatever, they just pull it away and you get this kind of level of detail. Shapes, renderings, and you can put whatever you want over top of it. Think CGI. If they already have pictures of you, they'd be able to pull this kind of information and render a full picture of you whenever they want. And it would be very close to the real thing. You ever take the phone into the restroom with you? You ever had your spouse using their phone while you're changing your clothes? And that camera's looking at you? You get the idea. The images are there for reference. You can be scanned an image and that stuff just overlaid on top. Privacy is dead, folks. It's absolutely dead. And keep in mind that this program is talking about doing this stuff at distance. Hundreds of meters away, if not miles away. All right, let's see what else is in here. I think we're done. I think we're down into the particulars of the actual program. Oh, let's see what they want to put this stuff on. So UAVs, right? Unmanned aerial vehicles. You're going to see law enforcement using this stuff all day long now. And others. Commercial industries are power companies and telecommunications companies, irrigation companies, water companies that transport water for miles and miles. They will be using drones. They already are using drones to evaluate their infrastructure rather than having somebody drive in a vehicle and get out and look. They just fly it with a drone. These systems will be up and available. Drone deliveries for packages are already on their way. They're making their way out into the public space now. Same thing with robotic law enforcement. You're seeing the rollout of those little dogs. I think they're called Spot. I don't quite remember. New York and LA are buying those up for police. So this kind of vision, computer vision, is here. And I pulled a bunch of these documents that come off the side of this. You see all these links on the side over here? I pulled some of these, most of them actually, and they're in the docs in the show notes if you want to look at them. Some of them are pretty interesting, and they just talk about their company and what they're good at, and some of them are software based, some of them are hardware based, and just just sharing what they can do here. Blurry image and be able to clean it up and render it and give you positive ID. Unprocessed, processed images. Enhancement with software at distance. Talking about turbulence mitigation, dehazing. So look, crappy day outside, smog in LA, for example, or smog in a city. Being able to look at that image and just take it all away. What they call dehazing, cleaning up the image. Cleaning up an airplane, super resolution, tracking it anywhere, denoising, all with software. We'll go quickly. Face recognition collected at 1,000 meters from the right. This is collected 1,000 meters away. This is the enrollment image on the left. The enrollment image. So what? Your is this the picture you take for your badge for work? Goes in a database. Is this your driver's license picture? Is this your passport picture? Immigration picture? Your mugshot? Anything. Is this you looking at your phone? So 1,000 meters away, they can identify you with a cross-reference. Biometric databases. Amazon has huge biometric database contracts with DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and more. Just as an example. And we will keep going. This one was creepy. I actually used the Queen. Face detection, face recognition, and co-occurrence analysis, object detection in video streams. So, everybody's seen those cool spy movies or cool action movies where you got the government looking at stuff with a satellite or tapping into cameras. Well, this is the real shit that they're doing. Publicly, what they're announcing that they want. I mean, these are the programs. You're like, oh my God, that's so cool what they do. They're really doing it. They're really doing it. There was something in here. Doesn't matter. We're burning time. We're already 50 minutes in, so we'll keep going. We're going to move to the next IARPA program. There was something in this one I wanted to share. I remember. Biometric systems, test engineers. Where is it here? TAC ID Mobile, an application that enables one-to-many facial matching on an Android and iOS platform. So here it is. This is a company that's good at using cell phones for this kind of tech, who's now putting their hat in the ring for satellite, drone, and tower-based imaging, using their software for distance. They're already good at applications that enable one-to-many facial matchings on an Android platform or an iOS platform. With this application, phones and tablets can successfully match against millions of records without connectivity. Without connectivity, that means that you don't have to be tied to the internet, and this can be done. Depending on the specific model, remember we were talking about the AI chips a minute ago? The RAM and the storage space, if connectivity exists, if you do have an internet connection or a Wi-Fi connection, the application is configurable to communicate with back-end servers for matching even larger databases, up to billions of records. Talking about software recognition that runs natively on Windows and Linux, so Microsoft is not excluded. Millions of images on a single laptop, drag and drop photos for searching against the database. What does this mean? You have an AI chip, you've got memory on your phone goes into a restaurant, your phone could now be used as a surveillance state apparatus to track or attempt to identify a person of interest that you have no idea even who it is. They might be in the restaurant, they might not. You might recognize them, you might not, but they're a person of interest to the state or to a corporation. And so they dump the information onto your phone while you're in the geo-fenced area in that proximity, so that whether or not you're on the network, whether or not you're able to transmit information, or even if they don't want the information transmitted, let's say you're doing this in another country, they dump the information on your phone, it stays on your phone, it does the searching and the analysis and the computation, and then when it's safe to do so, then it burps it out onto the network. So you see here, with or without network connectivity and being able to do things like dump a database onto a phone based on the, for example, the RAM and storage space and the processor space, that means that that can also be done selectively. Even if you have an internet connection, it may not spit that information out. I might wait till later. And this is loosely, I'm going to tie in blockchain, because this is how this stuff would work. If you wanted things moved around the internet, in this case, we're talking about images, right? If you wanted things moved around the internet, you would do it with device-to-device communication and have it not touch the networks. So it can be done covertly, jumping from device to device to device, setting up geo-fences until you get to the destination you want it to go. And that would all be contingent upon time. Can it wait a week to get there? Sure. Well, then it stays off the network a whole lot more than if it needs to get there in an hour. And the distance it needs to travel is like 5 miles, for example, thinking of an urban population. Something in a few city blocks, where you know an individual is going to go to a restaurant, they're going to take public transportation and go to work, take public transportation and go back home, maybe pick up the kids on the way, or stop at the market. And you can track that route and keep information off the network by bouncing, blockchain style, device-to-device communication, bouncing this information off of one device to another, passing it around device to device amongst complete and total strangers. And it never touches the internet until it's safe to do so, or until the last person that gets the collected information moves on to their destination, which is completely out of the zone of interest. This is how it would be done, folks. One method, not the method, but a method of moving information around covertly. By doing things like loading software on an Android device or an iOS platform. And in this case, something like Face ID to ID somebody where they're at. Think about your phone as you're using it, taking an intelligence photo of somebody who's the most wanted, right? And you happen to be the person that's in the coffee shop with them as they're going about their day thinking that nothing's going on. And you're using your phone, it's in an upright position, and your phone is scanning, and it, through these biometric recognition programs that we're looking at, is able to ID that person. And they're using your device, your power, your computational capabilities, your memory. They're using your device for surveillance that you have nothing to do with. And it is this overarching panopticonic technotronic apparatus that is always on and always looking, always watching, always listening. And we will move on to the JANUS program. Intelligence analysts often rely on facial images to assist in establishing the identity of an individual. Keep in mind, look over here at the date. This is 2013. So we looked at something that closed, the proposer's day closed yesterday, right? This one, what we just looked at, BRIAR, biometric recognition at distance, altitude and range, closed yesterday. Actually, 2 days ago now. I believe it's the 5th. This was the predecessor to it, or a predecessor to it, closing back in 2013. Facial images to assist in establishing the identity of individuals Sheer volume of possibly relevant video and photographs can be daunting, right? While automated face recognition tools can assist analysts in this task, current tools perform best on well-posed frontal facial photos taken for identification purposes. That enrollment photo thing we were looking at earlier. JANUS aims to fill this gap by developing tools and techniques to significantly improve the performance of face recognition on unconstrained videos and photos. Novel representations to encode the shape, texture, and dynamics of a face. New ways to use the techniques for faster and more accurate search and retrieval. FBI, January 6th, anybody? You think that they'd be using this kind of stuff to persecute peaceful protesters? You know? Did they use any of this to deal with BLM and Antifa during the summer of proverbial rage in 2020? During the worst pandemic the human race has ever seen, with a 99.97% survivability rate? Did they use any of this on no, probably not. Maybe, who knows? The FBI knows, or at least factions of them do. Ugh, the federal system is in trouble, folks. Trouble. So what they're trying to do with this is be able to work with a real-time feed, get partial images, and reconstruct with a certain amount of probability that it's the right person. Being able to ID the right person, certain amount of probability with real-time video that's not in an interview setting where you're looking at them head on, face to face. So let's see what this one is about. Here we go. So you've got still-to-still face recognition. This is back in 2013. This is where they say they were at with the technology in 2013, not where they want to go, but where they're at. So looking at, here's the picture of interest, and then they're referencing mugshots. So FBI database, Interpol database, right? Video to still. You just take a clip, a single frame, do the same thing. Look at a mugshot database. The JANUS program concept, advanced state-of-the-art in face recognition, back in 2013 is when this was offered. From using mugshots, that's where they started, to working with operationally relevant image sources, such as media in the wild. Using model-based recognition. And look, they use Osama bin Laden, right, to give you an idea of when this was made. So all media of the subject and photos, all put into a gallery, all with machine learning, learned models, computer modeling to match the likelihood. Data fusion, data analytics. And we will keep going. So engineered collection, right? Interview, like I said, interview setting versus something else, right? Looking at a side profile. State of the art solves face recognition by carefully controlling the collection scenario. 3-point lighting, 18% gray background, no smiling. Opportunities for carefully controlled collection is not always available. So, remember these guys? This was the Boston Marathon bombers. I forgot their name, Sarnav or something like that. I forgot their names. So this is, they're trying to provide justification. So you see their images here. These are what pictures you'd see in posts on Facebook or whatever, right? Twitter. And these are pictures from surveillance cameras or surveillance footage. Being able to take something that is a clean, clear, for all intents and purposes, a pristinely accurate photo, and to be able to take something that's at distance, far away, zoomed in, blown up, grainy as hell, and come up with positive ID. We've all seen this in movies. These are the real programs. In the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, IARPA, right? Face recognition, moving from intentional imagery like mugshots to recognition from operationally relevant resources. And look at this. They're putting a mesh on this person's face. There's more to the Face ID, folks, than meets the eye. No pun intended. Robust face detection and tracking has been demonstrated in videos acquired under a wide range of less than ideal imaging conditions. Commercial face capture. Look at this stuff. Facial animation models can capture texture and dynamics of the human face in millimeter detail. These models can render novel photorealistic variations of an individual's appearance. Going back to the full body shots where they can take your clothing off. Now just put this on top of that. Creating a model that can render novel photorealistic variations of you and your individual appearance. How pleasant, how pleasantly perverted. Unconstrained collection builds representations for static shapes. They'll extend this program JANUS will extend it into three-dimensional morphable shapes. Three-dimensional morphable shapes, folks. Using algorithms to register the multiple views of a subject available in the media and the wild to construct a facial representation. So they've got you on camera and you do a twirl. And then they can take that and use algorithms and render you in three-dimensional space, put you in a 3D model that's rendered, digital version. So if you were to create a three-dimensional space, a three-dimensional replication of an environment, somebody's house or a town square or an intersection in a busy city, be able to recreate that in 3 dimensions, three-dimensional representation, and then put people in it so that you can rotate and orient how you're looking at the image and the people. You can see their side, you can see their back, you can see their front, that it's all relevant to where they are and what their position is in the environment. And I say all of that to you because we're going to look at this here next, the creation of operationally realistic three-dimensional environments. Right? Three-dimensional environments. What is that? It's taking imagery from cameras and LiDAR and radar, light-based radar and microwave, millimeter wave-based radar and cameras, what we understand, which is just another piece of the electromagnetic spectrum, fusing all this stuff together, putting it into three-dimensional modeling and recreating a real environment in the digital space with three-dimensional modeling up to and including people. This was back in 2016, creation of operationally realistic 3D environment. Researchers in academia and industry have attempted to develop ways to capture the 3D geometry and surface properties of objects on the Earth more efficiently. And the US government has also invested in the development of means to exploit three-dimensional data. However, automated methods lag behind manual approaches for creating 3D models with respect to extracting mission-relevant information and understanding scenes. While manually constructed models are accurate and reliable, the process to create them is time-consuming, does not satisfy the need for models to support rapid response to military or humanitarian crises. In areas where up-to-date models do not exist, the core 3D program aims to deliver fully automated methods for timely 3D model creation to support our nation's military, humanitarian, and intelligence missions, wherever those missions may be. So inside your house, all the way out to looking at an entire city with the available sensor platforms. What are the sensor platforms? It starts with something like a smartphone. Take this, and a lot of these things are on a satellite. There's probably more on a satellite. definitely higher power, and likely greater sensitivity. But everything in between, a smartphone and a satellite, can be fused together to create this Core 3D program. 3D modeling everything. Everything. What is that going to look like when you have intelligence operations instead of crunching through file cabinets full of paper trying to figure out intelligence or strategy for the country or to capture somebody, to be able to put on augmented reality glasses, virtual reality glasses, and virtually immerse yourself in New York City with three-dimensional modeling software that's able to take real-time motion of people moving about in a large city like LA or New York, and you're just there as a proverbial spirit or a ghost looking around, because these systems are able to take all the satellite images and all of the sensor platform data from things like cell phones and Wi-Fi routers and cell towers and radio towers and local cameras that are everywhere in a major city, fuse it all together with AI using likely supercomputers or quantum computers to render three-dimensional images that come through your virtual reality glasses so that you can float around like a freaking ghost and look at the real world in real time. This is the level of technology that we're looking at. Core 3D program. Taking things like biometric recognition, identification at altitude and range, very, very new program that is an offshoot of the JANUS program that's been around, looking at things like Face ID, facial recognition, taking two-dimensional images and being able to render them in a three-dimensional environment. We'll go back to facial recognition here for a minute before we go back to the three-dimensional satellite stuff. Being able to render this stuff digitally, clean it up, clarify it, be able to extract things like emotion and intention. "3D head models, a useful conceptual visualization." Flat. You see these, they're flat, two-dimensional. Being able to take that and make it a three-dimensional virtual image. Domain-specific knowledge, explicit modeling like cranial and facial musculature, the muscles in your head and your face. Facial dynamics, the properties of the skin, the muscle, or the hair. Properties, curly, straight, blonde, brunette. Skin, old, young, wrinkly, pimply, scarred, freckled. Aging and weight gain, common facial decorations, hairstyles, glasses, hats, scars, beards. All these things have relevance. So let's look at some of Janus's stuff here. Let's see if there's anything interesting in here. Recognition of occluded and disguised faces using adaptive and robust correlation filters. It's a patent from this company who put their hat in the ring. George Mason, it's not a company, it's a school, excuse me. George Mason University. Robot Lab from Purdue. Tracking, facial tracking, multiple camera face tracking, face pose estimation, multiple cameras, networked. So a city networked, or an intelligence apparatus that has access to every camera on the American internet, or the global internet, What do you think Interpol has access to? The European omnipresent intelligence apparatus. Just one, mind you. Interpol deals with multiple countries tied into all their networks, multiple cameras, all fusing together, collecting information and dumping it into the same place. Multi-view face detection, eye detection and tracking, facial feature, point detection and tracking, facial feature detection tracking. Look at this stuff. Multiple points of interest. We've all seen these images, right? This was from back in 2013 when they were putting this stuff out. And now it's just commonplace. You're like, oh yeah, they can put a dot here and a dot there and a dot there. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's how they would know it's me with Face ID. And we'll get there with Face ID. There's so much more to that. Iris recognition. You mean like how they log into your phone? Again, with Face ID, you can look at your eye in addition to your face. Crazy at 25 meters. So you've got this over here, right? Enrolled and recognized. And they're talking about something like, this is 2 LP millimeters at 25 meters. I don't know, man. If they could recognize your iris at 25 meters, what, 75 feet away? So someone's holding a camera up and that camera's facing you and it sees your eye and at 75 feet away, it could ID you based on your iris. That's ridiculous. How clear is the zoom on your phone? If you were 75 feet away from something and you took a picture and you zoomed in to see it real close and the thing was 75 feet away from you, how clear is that image? That's commercial grade. And then look at what we're looking at. Algorithms to clean this stuff up, to deal with atmospheric distortion, to deal with blurry images. Let's see what else is in here. This is all part of the JANUS program. We'll go back to the core 3D stuff in a minute. Tensor faces. Look at this. This is an interesting diagram. Compact descriptive person representation. Facial signature and variant of viewpoint, illumination, and expression. You see here all the different ways that they can render an image. Computers don't see the way we see, folks. They would see all of this basically simultaneously, looking for subtle variations to be able to come up with a much more accurate response, much more accurate answer. And 3D shape reconstruction from two-dimensional data. So this is huge, putting everything in a three-dimensional environment. And when we start looking at the lasers and things like the Face ID cameras and the depth sensing on your rear-facing cameras, you'll see where three-dimensional mapping is. It's really where we're at. Everything is three-dimensionally mapped at this point. So all of these documents are on the side over here. Go to the JANUS program in IARPA. You can search this, very easy to find. All of these are PDFs, which is what we're kind of just skimming through right now. And you can there's information in these things. If you look at them long enough, you'll find that they reference other DARPA programs, they reference contract numbers, they reference patents. So there's a lot of information in these things if you spend the time digging on them. Take you off on rabbit trails for sure. But all of this is just complex facial recognition. Ironically, this is what everybody understands. This is what everybody understands when you think about surveillance. Oh, Face ID. This is just the start. This is just what came out first. It's far beyond that at this point. It's whole body, like we looked at before. This BRIAR program is whole body biometrics. It says right here. This is the next evolution of what we're looking at. Face ID, face recognition, da 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 da. Well, take that and the level of sophistication of that and apply it to whole body biometrics at long range from elevated platforms. And a camera is just a sensor that picks up electromagnetic radiation in the visible light spectrum. An antenna is a sensor that picks up electromagnetic radiation at whatever frequencies it's tuned to pick up, what we would understand as microwave and millimeter wave. They are no different, folks. They are no different. With software behind them, they do the same thing. It's just a different electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. Let's move on. Ooh, I wanted to share this one with you. This is one of the examples that I was talking about. Georgia Tech, DARPA. This is in the JANUS program. This is from Georgia Tech, and this is a flyer, if you will, poster that Georgia Tech provided. Integrated learning project. Multiple machine learning paradigms to learn and solve problems by observing an expert in a single problem-solving session. Georgia Tech Research, collaborating with Georgia Tech College of Computing, developed a case-based learner and reasoner platform as part of the integrated learning activity. So this is the stuff that goes behind the sensors I was talking about, the algorithms behind the cameras, the algorithms behind the antennas. This program talks about using an expert. So what would be a qualified gold standard of analysis or of identification, and using that to train machine learning, AI, and other learning models to be able to use other versions, other methods to identify and use that gold standard as a comparative, as a way to assess accuracy, as a way to assess probability. Look at this stuff. Monitoring for cognitive biases and radicalization influence. Representation, hypothesis, problem context, analyst tools. This is the client side. Server side, user modeling, cognitive bias, compensation, presentations, interaction history, and your repositories, your databases, right? Evidence, hypothesis, interaction history, user models, domain knowledge. Looking for cognitive biases and radicalization influence. Now, you could argue that this is to filter and normalize AI, or you could argue that this is a model they would be using to understand a person. Both would be true, in my opinion. What if analysis of policy influences on beliefs? Behavioral influence models, policy changes, environmental context, and scenarios. Check this out. An analyst for a political party may have a task that involves predicting potential targets of organization X, which produces ads against candidates that it disagrees with. So you mean like an election cycle. Got it. Okay. One aspect of this analysis may be to understand the views, beliefs, and intent of this organization that may motivate the organization's choice of particular targets or issues to make a commercial about. The analyst may need to look at an organization from several points of view. What are the political beliefs and associations of the organizations and its leaders? Military, if you're listening, this would be a very good example of the screening process that you're likely undergoing to determine whether or not you're an extremist and unfit in the hijacked Democrat Federation, the Army military federation that is the Democrat Party in occupied Washington, D.C. What are the political beliefs and associations of the organizations and its leaders? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, National Guard, Space Force, Coast Guard. Leaders, organizations. What are your political beliefs? Not allowed to have, certain political beliefs. So we need to know that. What are the religious beliefs? What are your religious associations? Are you a Christian? Shame on you. Right? I'm being sarcastic, by the way. What are the beliefs on particular issues of the organization's leaders? Oh, goodness gracious. What are the financial associations of this organization? Who provides funding to the organization, and what causes or activities does this organization fund? Well, do you donate? If so, who do you donate to? You donate to your church? You donate to InfoWars? You donate to any political action committee? Hmm. What cultural factors influence the conceptual structures that lead to radicalization? What characteristics of conceptual structures permit resistance to influence? Keep in mind, this was just for trying to design a very good political campaign ad for an election cycle, but you can see how it cross applies to something like, are you employable? Are you fit to serve your country? Are you fit to raise children? Do you pass a background check for a gun? Do you get medical care? If so, do you have to wait in line behind somebody who's woke in a socialist or communist based system? What's your credit score? Don't you think these questions would be directly applicable to establishing somebody's credit score? What their social disposition is amongst society, and if it fell in line with the beliefs and the mandates of the power structure? Just, just saying. Oh, this is an interesting little diagram here. Brain-based cognitive architecture. Keep in mind, this is in the JANUS program, right? This JANUS program that's designed to understand facial images, basic biometrics, right? And you've got this this Georgia Tech software-based analytics platform put behind sensors like cameras and antennas and others. Brain-based cognitive architecture for training AI. Training AI. It's an architecture based on neuroscientific models of student reasoning, learning, and emotion. Integrate lessons from brain-based models of human learning and reasoning with student modeling, teaching and learning theories, and scenario generation. Design of a system. Assess an individual's learning and emotion. Dynamically adapt training activities to increase training effectiveness. Goodness gracious. So I don't know how this one applies into Janus, but nonetheless, it's here. And these are the little gems that I'm talking about. You find stuff like this and you're like, dude, this is some intense stuff. Face identification on the cloud. Scalable infrastructure for face identification. All right, so we've got approximately a half hour left. And we're going to start looking at this program right here, this 3D modeling program. This is really where it's going with imaging from an intelligence perspective, in order to put it in a form that humans can understand, not robots or AI, but humans. Robots would need a three-dimensional environment to overlay so that they would be able to navigate better, right? Give them complex mapping, robots, physical robots in the environment. They would have real-time sensors, but they would also have a map, three-dimensional map, and it would be used to reference as well as update. But for humans to understand the environment, we don't see radar intelligently the way a computer would. we don't see the textures the same way. We don't reason the same way. So this creation of operationally realistic 3D environments, or core 3D, is a big step forward with being able to take a whole bunch of information and put it in a visual representation, because 70% we're 70% visual. 70%. Be able to conceptualize things. A lot of it comes through your eyes. A lot of information can be efficiently conveyed, effectively conveyed to a human, to an analyst, or to an operator on the ground with something like this. Taking all kinds of data, all kinds of imaging, all kinds of images, all kinds of resolution, everything, put it together in a 3D model and let somebody look at it or experience it in a three-dimensional space. And it says here that current modeling technology, by the time it's clear that the model may be of assistance, access to the region may be difficult or compromised. The only data available from which to construct a model may be data from remote sensors. The ability to perform high fidelity, right? High definition, high fidelity, 3D geospatial modeling using only remote sensor data is essential in order for the US government to be able to model locations anywhere on the Earth. Automated methods to create such models will not only enable their construction in an operationally relevant time frame for use in the time of crisis, but it will also enable frequent updating of such models as satellite data are refreshed. Development of models for construction of high fidelity 3D models fully automatically, interesting wording they use there, fully automatically from remote sensor data is the overall goal of the Core 3D program. So let's look at the cute and fluffy side of Core 3D. Geospatial intelligence, military intelligence, humanitarian mission planning. Three-dimensional object models rich in physical properties with functional attributes. Fully automated methods, automated methods for timely 3D model creation, leveraging spectral, textural, and dimensional information. Spectral, what is that? Spectrum. Electromagnetic spectrum comes to mind. What other spectral or spectrum things can you think of? Textural, concrete versus grass, right? Skin versus asphalt. Dimensional information, up, down, left, right, time, front, back. From satellite data to yield models that are dimensionally true and that accurately render textures, materials, and types of objects within the scene. So you can look at modern video games and get an idea of what can be created in a CGI environment. In modern video games, the people look damn near real. Like real. With resolution down to being able to see hairs on a beard, or skin pores, or freckles, or beads of sweat, or lines in the skin around the neck, or furrowed on the eyebrow. You get the idea. That level of CGI, that level of fake video creation, but applied for something, tactical or practical. Physical modeling, current limitations, right? Humans extract outlines of buildings manually by mouse clicks. They're talking about how they gather intelligence. Back in 2016, I think is what this was, when they were opening this up, this program. They manually measure the heights of objects from high-resolution stereo imagery using mensuration tools. Interesting. Software allows humans to extrude objects. Humans manually clean up and align objects to finalize a modeling process. They want to do all this stuff automatically. Automated methods are limited. Generate 3D point clouds, multi-view satellite imagery. 3D models from LiDAR, light-based radar. It's just lasers basically shining down from space. Wonder what they can do with those besides take your picture. High resolutions, 0.3 meters or better, right? So less than a half a meter resolution or better is required to generate reasonably accurate models. Applications for this stuff. Look, see, digital rendering. Looks real. It's not. Mission planning or rehearsal, human perspective, line of sight. So you can take these 3D models and bring it all the way down to like this, a soldier on a second story scaffolding or second story hallway. People down here below. Being able to render this stuff and put in virtual training scenarios, or to run through intelligence operations where you're tracking a guy in a country and you can render all this stuff and put yourself literally 2 steps behind the guy you're tracking to see which door he goes in based on 3D modeling from multiple satellites and multiple sensors in the area, rather than looking at a snapshot of a satellite photo. You're able to render a 3D model and put yourself 1.5 feet behind the person of interest and move as they are moving virtually in something that looks like this. That, I mean, major jump in intelligence gathering. Physical security vulnerability and assessments, flyovers and simulations, dynamic modeling, change detection and updating, gaming and training. Disaster relief and urban visualization. So you can look at your infrastructure. You can look at a building structure. You could look at the various components of a building structure. What's metal? What's wood? How is it structured? If you wanted to strategically demo this tower right here, rather than just looking at a black and white grainy satellite photo, you can image it with multispectral imaging, various forms of electromagnetic radiation ranging from shortwave to light to X-ray, right? Image the whole thing through the whole spectrum or whatever spectrum you want, and then be able to understand what's made of iron, what's made of wood, what's made of concrete, where's the desks, where's the furniture, where's the people, all in real time. And you can do whatever you wanted with that information. But all these colors in this image mean something, right? Do they mean that they're made of different materials? Perhaps. Physical modeling. Best fit model from library objects. They're going to grow this library. I'm going to show you some stuff in a minute, but it's pretty cool. So in this program, they're going to release a whole bunch of satellite photos to the public and then let people develop the software to create 3-dimensional models. And from all that, they're going to get giant 3D modeling libraries of real stuff, like pick a city. They'd be able to 3D model all the major buildings and all of the intersections and down to bus stops and mailboxes and, you know, everything. Signage, trees. Let's see what they say in here. This company's crazy. They're into neuroscience and everything, but look, it's a military contractor type companies. So they're into neural networks and deep learning and they're into neuroscience and they're into surveillance and they're into imaging and all this stuff, right? These are the companies that are involved in this stuff. Multi-level, multimodal data fusion, geometric algebra scene generation, large data architecture integration, physics-based virtual testbed development for training and technology evaluation, so they can simulate physics, create software to simulate physics. and apply it in 3-dimensional space. Wouldn't that be cool? We teach a demo team how to effectively do their job. If you're ordnance in the military, and you're responsible for things like bomb disposal, or you're responsible to go in and demolition something like a bridge or a building for a military application, wouldn't that be cool to have some virtual training so that you could go in and theoretically place whatever you needed to place and then run the simulation and have the physics be all coded into the program so that you would be able to understand what happens based on your placements, based on how much material you used, what the atmospheric conditions were, what around was flammable. Were there active power lines around? Were there gas lines around? Was there sewage around? Being able to take the physics of the environment, literally the physics of the environment, and fuse it into training. It would be remarkable. It'd be a very, very good way to take a novice, somebody who's never done it before, and put them through intensive training where they don't hurt themselves in the process. They would be able to fail and learn conceptually, learn in a classroom environment very, very cheaply once it was developed and safely. And they would be trained up much, much faster than actually giving them real materials, tangible materials up front and saying, here, go do this. You'd be able to run simulations over and over and over and over and over again very quickly. Then this 3-dimensional modeling stuff would be very applicable for all kinds of learning. I mean, you take this stuff and apply it to just a regular civilian education. You know, driver's training comes to mind. It'd be very easy to do, pretty cheap. Driver's training with a HoloLens, driver's training with an Oculus. That's probably on its way. History, you could do a tour of a famous building or a famous art museum, all in 3D. Relive a period of time in history. Civil rights movement, for example, could all be done, recreated. To be standing at the Washington Monument listening to Martin Luther King. Fully immersive history with this kind of technology. 3D views, 3D imaging, 3D rendering from 2-dimensional sensor platforms. So they're able to, what they're showing you here is 3D surfaces from multi-view overhead imagery. So they take multiple pictures and they're able to take those pictures and overlap them in such a way where they're able to actually create. This is the same, right? You see parking spots here, overhead satellite imagery, different pictures, satellites traveling around, right? Some of them are stationary over countries, like they don't really move. They move in relation to the spin of the Earth, and other satellites actually move at a different rate than the Earth is spinning. So you take multiple pictures and then you're able to do things like create a 3-dimensional view of the same thing that looks flat overhead. Different perspective. 3D surface from multiple view. Air Force Research Lab and DARPA is what these people are advertising. Large scale visualization. And we keep going. This is where we're going with the imaging, folks. Smooth surface reconstruction via proprietary DNAX technology and voxel processing. This is pulse perfect images. The ability to do near real-time photorealistic 3D rendering and object modeling, applications to gaming, film rendering, medical imaging, and mineral exploration. Virtual reality, real-time 3D rendering, So you have polygon mesh construction, it's old tech, down to DNA smooth surface construction. So the question is, does your phone do this? I don't see any fur on that bunny rabbit, do you? But I do see every line and every curve. What is privacy today? Do we even understand how our privacy is being violated? Do we even understand? This one was interesting. Satellite image scene understanding. We can now do the following with our cloud-based system. They can recognize objects as small as pedestrians, a pedestrian, crossing in an area as large as 200,000 square kilometers with only 6 hours of processing on our in-house cloud-based platform that's fully compatible with the Amazon cloud. It's fully compatible with the Amazon cloud. This is what this company is advertising. They can identify, recognize objects as small as a person crossing in a 200,000 square kilometer area with 6 hours of processing on their cloud-based platform that's compatible with Amazon's platform. Their wide area object detection system can recognize pedestrian crossings with a precision of 89% and a recall of 63%. You're not hiding if you go to the country, folks. There is no hiding. There is no hiding. And we'll continue. Check this out. Sensor fusion for semantic segmentation of urban scenes. Look at this. Aerial LiDAR. So they're using lasers, laser radar, to render this image. Single satellite building extraction. So compare and contrast what they're doing here. Advanced imaging, sub-pixel recognition, and anomaly detection using hyper multispectral imaging. Sub-pixel, folks. Less than 1 pixel. A variation in less than 1 pixel, and they're able to identify it. 3D reconstruction using satellite images. Cool heat maps. This stuff's incredibly high definition. And this is the stuff that our taxpayer dollars fund. "3D reconstruction with strong shapes." So here we go back to face recognition. And you can see reconstruction from low quality images. Is that Michelle Obama? Michael? I don't know. Check this out. So you have an input picture here, and then you can render different orientations from this one image. You can render all of these other images. Head up, all the way to head down, a left profile, straight on profile, and a right profile with that input image. Here's another one. all with computer modeling. You have a one image, and then you can have all of these as available images for identification. Pretty cool, if you ask me. I think it's pretty good technology. So rather than moving forward, we went through basically this stuff right here. And what we're going to get into next time is looking at detecting emotion using directed energy, mostly light. Remotely determining information about a person's emotional state, detecting invisible human emotion with a camera, deception detection, measuring physiological parameters, attention detection with Apple. This I'll just give you a little. This one's going to tie into the next couple shows. But this is from Apple in 2018, attention detection. Detection of a user paying attention to a device may be used to enable or support biometric security, for example, facial recognition. Enable features on the device. The images captured by the camera on the device may be used to determine if the user is paying attention. The facial features images may be assessed to determine if the user is paying attention to the device. The features may be assessed through a comparison of feature vectors generated from the captured images. Feature vectors. What I want to show you here is this. These are what they're calling feature vectors, and these are just like little data points. So machines don't see the way we see. They see data. They don't necessarily have to see pretty pictures. But what they talk about in here is infrared, right here in the summary. Determining whether a user is paying attention to a device may be used to enable or support biometric security, face recognition. Device can determine whether a user is paying attention to a device before authenticating the user or enabling access to any data, passwords, personal data, etc., or certain systems, for example, a payment system, to prevent unintentional access. So your phone is watching you, making sure you're watching the phone while it goes through something that has a higher level of priority or higher classification or higher security permission. Attention may be determined by capturing an infrared illuminated image of the user of the device. Facial features may be encoded to generate feature vectors in a feature space. These classifiers may then be used on the feature vector to determine if the user is paying attention. That's for your convenience only, right? They're only doing this to make sure that you don't accidentally get a false charge on your credit card through the Apple Pay program. That's the only reason. Determining attention may include using one or more of the classifiers to determine if the feature vectors for the captured image correlate to these vectors, meaning, is there enough data? Has enough data been collected about your face to have trained the system to recognize it's you versus anybody else? There's 8 instances of infrared. And they talk about in here certain embodiments of this thing. The sensors, talked about sensors and electromagnetic spectrum a lot, may be included but not limited to a charge coupled device or a complementary metal oxide semiconductor, CMOS, sensor elements to capture infrared images or other non-visible electromagnetic radiation or other non-visible electromagnetic radiation. What is that, folks? Microwave, millimeter wave, radar technology. Radar technology, what we would understand is something not a camera. In some embodiments, the camera includes more than one image sensor, captured multiple types of image. For example, a camera A camera may include both IR, infrared, and the red, green, and blue sensors. Now it talks about illuminators here and flood illuminators, right? Light detectors may include an illuminator for visible light, a flash illuminator. Oh, it's dark. Let me turn on my flash. Click. You get a flash. Or an illuminator that's infrared, a infrared floodlight, right? And a speckle pattern projector. We're going to look at speckle pattern projectors a lot very soon. Certain embodiments, the illuminators may include an array of light sources such as, but not limited to, V cells, vertical cavity, surface emitting lasers. Lasers, folks. Lasers. 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 I'm going to pause this and drop share real fast. I don't think I clicked the box, and I want you to see this. We're going to see it again at some point soon, but for now, I'm going to show you this.
This is something like what your iPhone 10 will see when it's trying to detect your face. As you can see, I'm using a 3DS here, a Nintendo 3DS, and I am aiming it up here. I'll show you at a Kinect sensor. Okay, now what's that got to do with the iPhone 10? Well, I found out there's a company called, was it PrimeSense? I wrote it down here on my little notes here. Yeah, PrimeSense, that Apple bought in 2013. And I'm trying to see my face. How do I do this? Okay, if Nintendo made it easy to upload videos from the 3DS, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm sure there's a way, but they didn't make it easy. But anyway, there's a company called PrimeSense that made the Kinect for, here's the Kinect, for the Xbox 360. And what it does is project dots with by means of a little infrared laser projector somewhere here. And actually, maybe if I swung around, you can kind of see it projecting. Oh, actually, I haven't tried this before. It looks kind of like a web, doesn't it? That's kind of cool. But anyway, so that's a dot projector, and kind of project, as we saw here, dots all over your face, and kind of wonder about the safety of that. I don't know about laser pointers pointing into my eyes. I'm taking a chance here, but I don't know if I like it. And I mean, you know, I looked up what Apple says about it. Let me see. I'll quote what I read. That the true depth camera may be disabled for safety reasons at some times. That sounds interesting. Not sure what that's about. And but they do claim it's safe to use under normal conditions. So I'm not sure what an abnormal.
So I didn't know the Kinect had a laser-based system, just like the iPhone, and that PrimeSense or PrimSense, the Apple bought them in 2013. I've actually looked at some patents that are PrimSense patents in order to understand more about these V cells that are vertical cavity surface emitting lasers. These things can project a lot of power. And quite frankly, they can project more power than what's needed to stimulate a nerve, a peripheral nerve. And I can show you that, and I will show you that when we start looking at Face ID, when we start looking at this piece that's in the notes here, and it's underneath the section that's underneath infrared. I'm still building this section out. But like I said, today we only got through down to basically right here. So we're going to go through cameras more. We're going to look at what cameras can do on the phone. There's a whole section on Human Internet that talks about camera technology, things like understanding your brain activity, understanding your heartbeat and your respiration, understanding your emotions using a camera. And then I found more that we'll go over as well, detecting invisible human emotion, understanding deception, physiological parameters, attention span, I think is what I want to say. And then we'll get into the infrared stuff. The projected light projectors is the term. And this stuff is in your iPhone. It's in basically all mobile devices. We just saw it in a Connect, and companies like Lockheed Martin also use this technology. Same stuff. They actually cite Apple patents that deal with V-cell technology. Lockheed Martin does for military grade, commercial grade sensing, up to and including quantum-based sensing of magnetic fields, where they can use I'll leave it there. They can use light emitters in a diamond nitrogen vacancy environment is a term, and they're able to understand the spin states of two different resonant spin states based on a magnetic field, and they can understand the magnetic field. So these phones are way more sophisticated than what we're able to do with them. And anyway, there's a lot more on that as time goes on. I found that one today, and it shocked me. But I haven't been able to identify an Apple patent, for example, that talks about the diamond nitrogen vacancy based sensor systems. But that was a Lockheed patent that referenced the Apple V-cell laser emitting diode patents that Apple has for Face ID recognition. And Lockheed Martin had a patent that was discussing quantum-based magnetic field sensing with the Apple patent as a citation. So, I mean, this stuff is becoming so cheap that they're just putting it in consumer grade devices, and all it's doing is deploying a very advanced sensor-based platform that are available to those that have access to those tool sets. But the consumer public, we're paying for it, and I don't even think people realize exactly what it is you're carrying around in your pocket. So more on this stuff as time goes on, and I think I am out of time. So I'll see you guys soon.